Welcome to the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy e-learning program. I am Ms. Jamilla Bacchus, your facilitator for CAPE Biology. At early pregnancy, it acts as a water cushion. So that amniotic fluid that is inside of that inside of the amnion or the amniotic sac, it acts as a water cushion that absorbs external shock. You would imagine if a woman is there and maybe she got a little bump, somebody passed and touches her tummy and so on. If that amniotic fluid was not there, then that developing fetus will get the full effects. The fact that the fluid is there, it absorbs the shock of any external injury or so, any external touch, and so that fetus is protected. It acts as a heat insulator, right? It acts as a heat insulator, so no matter what, it keeps this developing fetus in the right temperature, nice and warm. It prevents adhesion of embryo to wall of uterus, right? You would not want to have the embryo stuck to the walls of the uterus. If that fluid was not there, then that may very well happen. So it plays an important role in that. It also allows buoyancy. Think about it. This fetus is there. You always see it more or less central. Good? It's because that fluid is around it and it keeps it buoyant. It keeps it within that space that will always keep it more or less central and allow great movement within the fluid. It prevents adhesion of fetal parts. So you don't want the leg to get stuck to the stomach or the hand stuck to the head. The fact that you have the fluid around the entire structure, you will prevent that sticking together, that adhesion of the various parts. In late pregnancy, what is the function of the amniotic fluid? It is a repository of fetal urine, yes. So the fetus will be producing urine, and the urine would flow into that fluid. And that is why it's very important that the fetus does not breathe in this amniotic fluid. And so the fetus, if the fetus is in distress, then it's very important that the medical team get that fetus out, because if the fetus should breathe in that fluid, they should start to breathe and that fluid gets into the lungs, then we know that it could have tragic consequences. It allows fetal movements to help body muscles develop. So as the fetus is within this fluid and it's moving within the fluid, it's like someone swimming in the sea. It helps with muscle development. It helps the muscles to exercise and so on and so be strengthened. By the time the baby is born, it has already started a lot of movement and development of its muscles. It also helps in the development of the muscles used in sucking and swallowing along the muscles of the gut. So sucking and swallowing, very, very important, because if that baby is born and it cannot, when you put it to the breast or you put it to a bottle and it cannot suck, it cannot take in its food, then it can die. It's very important that those muscles are developed, and that the movement of that fluid through the alimentary canal, constantly moving through, it helps the muscles to develop within the mouth and within all along the alimentary canal. Lastly, the effects of maternal behavior on fetal development. As you know, we would all appreciate, this is precious cargo. This fetus is precious cargo. And so we will try our best, we must try our best to ensure that it is allowed to develop safely. And so mothers persons who are pregnant are asked to, they are advised to do certain things that will maintain the health of their fetus into baby. And so we have prenatal monitoring. As I said earlier, it's very important, very early, you go to check on your doctors. They may do blood tests. You may need additional mineral support. Folic acid and calcium folic acid, calcium, and iron, especially iron and folic acid, very, very important initially. Calcium, the mother should be taking, because I tell you, if the mother doesn't take it in her diet, the baby will take it from her. She will have increased toothache, increased problems as she goes along. So prenatal monitoring, they need to check your weight, they need to advise things like gestational diabetes and so on. Very important that, that is monitored. Illegal or illicit drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes. So all of them, it goes without saying, will have a detrimental effect on the developing fetus. They can cross the placenta. In particular, as I said, carbon monoxide will impact on respiration within the fetus. Alcohol, you can have babies that are born already addicted to alcohol. Likewise for drugs. And so, it is very, very painful to see a baby in the hospital already addicted to a drug. And these things obviously will not go well for the development of the baby. Lastly, nutrition. Very, very important that she eats well. She needs certain key vitamins and minerals because it's a new life that is forming. And so you literally need everything in a balanced diet. You have to ensure that you put a lot of emphasis on eating foods with the right amount of minerals and vitamins, and try not to, I know sometimes, we crave certain things. Watch those cravings. Yes, it's good to try to splurge, and because of the presence of certain hormones, sometimes you feel like you can't control it. But, you still have to realize there's life after the pregnancy. And so if you gain too much weight, then it's a problem to take it off. So we need to still be wise as to how we eat. So let's look at the questions. Give a concise description of the key stages in the fertilization of a human secondary oocyte by a spermatogoon. Begin your account with the acrosome reaction. And this carries 5 marks. Good? So we have to give a key stages, the key stages in the fertilization of a human secondary oocyte. And they told us to begin with the acrosome reaction. So the first thing you have to speak to is the head of the sperm with its acrosome approaching the zona pellucida and releasing the enzymes that are held within the acrosome to digest away the zona pellucida, right? And that's the acrosome reaction. That would cause the sperm to merge with the membrane of the oocyte, the secondary oocyte. That will also cause the granules, the cortical granules that are located within the secondary oocyte to then release their contents, which will now seal off the vitelline layer, and so not allow any additional sperm to merge with the membrane. That sperm that merges with the membrane will now release its nucleus. As the nucleus is released, the last stage of the process of meiosis takes place within the secondary oocyte, where from metaphase 2, where it was halted, it continues on to anaphase 2, telophase 2, and cytokinesis 2, thereby producing the nucleus of the ovum and the second polar body. Now, the nucleus of the ovum becomes the pronucleus, and the sperm nucleus is the other pronucleus, and so together they merge. Once they merge, this is now the process of fertilization, the merging of the male and the female nuclei to form a unique nucleus that is now the nucleus of the zygote. Good? So that, something like that should give you your 5 marks. The key stages in the fertilization, the meeting of the nucleus of the male and female, and begin with the acrosome. So you have to speak of the acrosome reaction. You also have to speak about fertilization. But before fertilization occurs, remember the last stage in meiosis will take place to form the ovum, the nucleus of the ovum, and therefore that will prepare it. Second part of the question. Briefly comment on the significance of the process. Briefly comment on the significance of the process of fertilization. How, if you were to write over this question, what would you say? Briefly comment on the why is fertilization important? What is the benefit of fertilization to the species? Good? And if we think about it, why is fertilization important? And as we said at the beginning of this lesson, we need to continue these species, but we want to produce offsprings that are genetically unique. And so when fertilization takes place, we are merging information from a male gamete with information from a female gamete. And this mixture brings about a unique individual that is unlike any other, unless, of course, it's a maternal twin. But it's unique. And fertilization ensures that you have enough genetic mixing of the chromosomes that should the environment change, should things happen in the environment, some of the members of the species will be able to survive because of the many different genetic makeups we will have existing within the environment. Some will survive to carry on the species. So fertilization is very important in the long-term sustainability of any species. It ensures that you will reform the diploid cell. Because remember, during meiosis, we went from a diploid cell to a haploid cell. And now that the two nuclei have merged, we have again gotten back a diploid nucleus, which has 2 sets of chromosomes. And so going forward, we maintain that diploid number. Describe 2 major functions of the placenta. 2 major functions of the placenta. So we have so many to choose from. You can speak either to the transfer of the nutrients, the glucose and the amino acids, glycerol and fatty acids across. We can speak to the removal of waste. We can speak to the fact that it is an endocrine gland continuing to produce hormones that would maintain the pregnancy. We can speak to the fact that it acts as a protection in terms of allowing antibodies to cross. So there are many choices from which we can get to. Likewise, discuss 2 ways in which maternal behavior can affect fetal development. Here, now note the amount of marks that you have for these questions. So if they ask you to describe, you don't just list, you don't just mention them. You have to describe those functions. Again, if they ask you to discuss 2 ways in which maternal behavior can affect fetal development, you don't just say that smoking cigarettes is unhealthy, is bad for the fetus. You have to go in to speak to why. What about smoking cigarettes will affect it? The fact that you're producing carbon monoxide, among other things, among the nicotine that is produced, which can cause addiction, but the carbon monoxide will also allow the body to get less oxygen and so less respiration, and you will affect the growth of the fetus. So when you are answering these questions, note, you see these words, these leading words here, they tell you what the examiner is looking for. Be very careful what they require, and also look at the marks that are given. That will give you an indication of what they require. Now, more or less, we have come to the end of this topic. Quite an interesting topic. And we would have outlined and be able to achieve the objectives. I want in particular for you to be able to do these things here, which of course we may not have been able to do here, but you should be able to draw, label, and annotate the placenta, also of the fetus in early development. And I want you to be able to, appreciate the importance of this process of sexual reproduction in humans. We are all here because of sexual reproduction. Yes, I know some people only think of the fun part of it, but it is as important, it is very important in terms of our survival as a species, that we continue to carry out sexual reproduction. So it's not just for your personal good that we should carry out sexual reproduction, but the good of our species, the good of this universe, that we should carry out sexual reproduction. Of course, as a footnote, let me state that certainly there's a time and place. And I would advocate that you understand what that means in terms of when you should get involved in sexual reproduction. You should look at in terms of your body's development, whether you can treat with some of the things that you need to treat with: financial development, emotional development, social development, before you engage in such activity. So when you look at the next part of this, the last part of this course, which is the ways in which you prevent pregnancies, then I think you will have a greater understanding of your responsibility in ensuring that sexual reproduction only takes place in the context in which it will be successful. I thank you for viewing. This is Ms. Jamilla Bacchus with the Division of Education, Innovation, and Energy. Have a good day.